Okay, so for this week's module, we're going to start delving into some rocks and mineral stuff. So we kind of gave you a little introduction, I guess, but there was some pretty serious stuff in there. We talked about, the interior and plate tectonics and things like that. What we're going to try to do next is get into some rocks and minerals, but because this course is focused more on the environment and hazards and disasters, we're not going to spend as much time as we typically would in a typical geology intro class. So there is another course called GLG101. It's physical geology, and we probably spend maybe 4 weeks or more talking about rocks and minerals. Here we're going to try and condense that to about 2 weeks. Now, we don't need to know everything about rocks and minerals, but we need to know some basics because, of course, when we talk about hazards, knowing something about the rocks can tell us about the hazards. So rocks that are stronger versus rocks that are weaker, or rocks that form a particular way. If there's going to be a landslide, sometimes rock strength is important. So we would like to know something about that. Certainly when we talk about volcanoes, and we'll get into that and the rock types there, but that has a role understanding the types of rocks that are involved in that. So what we're going to try and do for this module is introduce you to 2 of the 4 things that we want to get through in the next 2 weeks. So one is minerals, and the next is igneous rocks. And then in the following module, we'll do the last 2 groups of rocks, sedimentary rocks and metamorphic rocks. So yes, there's a lot of information, but like I said, because we're focusing on the hazards, we're leaving out some information. I'm trying to make it a little more manageable. So what you'll see here are 2 PowerPoints. One is focused on minerals, one is focused on igneous rocks. Now, when we talk about igneous rocks, we're going to tie that back to the plate tectonic knowledge that you have. Okay, so we're going to talk about where we get igneous rocks, and it's mostly related to plate tectonics. And so you're going to go through the PowerPoints, or of course you can go through the videos and kind of learn about these 2 topics. So obviously start with the minerals. These are the building blocks, right? We talk a little bit about elements and atoms because those, when they combine, they make minerals. And minerals have specific properties. They have certain colors, they have certain textures, they have certain strength and things like that. And then when minerals combine together, we get rocks. So we want to understand a little bit about minerals because those properties will translate to the rocks. So start with minerals, kind of work your way through that, do some of the basics, and then we'll talk about igneous rocks. We'll relate it once again to plate tectonics. And then, of course, when we talk about volcanoes, we'll bring that back again. So you'll have a couple more times to kind of get through this igneous rock stuff. There is a little study guide because it's a lot of information this week for that. So this is what I'll want you to go through for the lecture quiz. So what I decided for the article is, because there's a lot of information, we'll kind of make it not too crazy, and we'll focus just on granite, which is a particular type of rock. It's super common. You've probably heard of it. You might have it as your countertop somewhere in your home, but the article is just going to talk about, the formation of granite and its uses. And of course, that'll be introduced to you in the igneous rock portion if you don't really know what granite is. And so we're super focused on that so you don't get overwhelmed, hopefully. And then finally, for the homework, it's kind of the same deal. Yes, minerals are important, and we want you to know the basics of that, but igneous rocks are really, the priority this week. So for the homework, we're going to focus on that. So I'm going to bring that back, after you've gone through the lecture stuff, and have you kind of look for a few more answers and kind of probe some questions there. So it's just, you're going to click the link. It's going to take you to some questions. And so you'll use some of the information from the lecture. You'll use some of the information from the online textbook, right? So remember, that's available in the additional resources page. So you can go through there to look for the answers for that. So that's what you're going to do for this week when we talk about all the minerals and igneous rocks. Now, don't forget, of course, you do have a lab. And so here in the lab, remember, you have to view now, in this case, all these. There's 3 of them. And so I want you to go through those before you start the lab. And the reason for that is because, of course, we're going over 2 kind of main ideas, minerals, which is here. So I want you to read through this, and of course, talk about some basic rock forming minerals and their compositions and some of their properties. And so we want to use that information for the lab. And then in addition, you're going to look at igneous rock. So this little video is to help you figure out, how do we identify those? So yeah, we look at them, we make some observations, but of course we don't expect you to memorize all the rock names. And so here's some a chart that we use. So here are the rock names that are given here, and here are some of the ways that we identify them by what they're made of, the composition, and their texture. And once you can identify those two things, you can just use the chart, right? So that video is going to help you work through that, and that's kind of what we're going to do in the lab. And so kind of go through that, watch that other video. There's even another video that talks about source. So hopefully to all these videos, you'll be able to blaze through this stuff, but they're shorter. So, take a minute to go through those, because hopefully that will help you get through the lab fairly easily. All right. So as always, if you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to contact me, and I will help you out with all this craziness.